Terry, the next 30 minutes, the floor is yours. Would you like to have a sign, or do you want a timer in the view?
Yeah, however you do it. I've got my own timer over here, so I'll be mindful of it.
Cool. Well, floor is yours.
Cool. Thank you. I'm Terry. I'm an addict.
Hey, Terry.
It's good to be here with you. I'll also tell you I'm a man of long-term recovery. And what that means is, if I just say I'm an addict, like that's, if you say that at my granddaughter's school, if I go to their school play and they go, "Who are you?" I go, "I'm their grandpa. I'm an addict." That doesn't really have the right vibe to it. So I'd like to also add that I'm a man of long-term recovery. And what that means is that because of the grace of a loving God that I found through the rooms of Cocaine Anonymous, that I've not had to take any drugs or alcohol since May the 23rd, 1991. And as a result of that, some amazing things have happened in my life. And I want to talk about those with all of you right now, right? What my life was like before the miracle and what it's like now. So, man, I love the vibe of Spiritually Lit. It feels so good to be here with you. It was so nice that so many had their microphones on. So when I said, "I'm Terry, I'm an addict," I got to hear that back, because that's one of the things that I missed the most with COVID, right? When it all went to Zoom and "Hey, I'm Terry," and it was silence. And man, I need all of you desperately. Although I'm 33 years sober, I need you as much today as I did the day that the miracle happened for me. And what I want you to know is this: Cocaine Anonymous found me. I didn't find it. I was doing so much dope and drinking so much alcohol, and I had been living like that most of my life, that I was convinced that the very best thing that could happen for me, or for my wife who I love, or for my sons who were 7 and 3, the very best thing that could have possibly happened would have been for me to kill myself. And so that's how dark my life was before the light of recovery pierced that darkness. Now that has been and is, and I pray will always be, a guiding principle of my life in recovery. I go where the wild things are. I go where the addicts, I go to the treatment centers and the jails and the prisons, and I love it where the wild things are. I love where all the people are used, and when people come into my meeting, if they're loaded, it's "Welcome home." Hopefully you hear something here that might just give you enough of a desire to take a little bit further look, get maybe a little past your own self-hatred and denial to see what's really going on here. So Cocaine Anonymous found me. I was dying. I was in a hospital. I was on day, I think, 7 or 8 of a detox. And I'm the kind of drug addict that I've never met a drug I didn't like. I never met a bad habit I didn't love. It's like, I remember the first time I shot heroin, it was in Germany, and I'm in the military, and it's like, man, I started shooting heroin, and everybody around me, when they would shoot up, they would throw up. Not me. Oh, no, man. I just went, I can breathe. I just loved the effect that drugs and alcohol had on me. And in the beginning, it was a connection to life. It was everything I was hoping for. It was good times. It was laughter. It was nightclubs. It was ladies' night every night. I'm just like loving my life. And then somewhere along the way, the song changed. And instead of the laughter that drugs and alcohol produced with my friends, where we would kick it and play sports or tell stories or try our moves on the lake, whatever it was, that all changed. And instead of drugs and alcohol being this outward expansion of love and life, it turned inward on me to where I became more and more reclusive. And in the end, it was just me and the dope. The misery, the loneliness, the hatred, the despair, the darkness that surrounded me. Bill describes it on page 8 in the big book, quicksand spread in all directions. And so I was in this, it didn't start like that. And because it started as a solution, I got into it. And by the time I realized that things were going bad, it had its hook in me so bad. So I've done pretty much every drug. However, there've been a lot that have come along since I stopped. And that's why I'm so grateful for Cocaine Anonymous. What a brilliant moment when a group of people got together in California and started our fellowship. What caused them to start it, I've been blessed to know some of the beautiful people like Kenzie, who's on a lot of these meetings, and some of the others that were there in the beginning. And people like Monica that were there in the beginning of the expansion of Europe. And what was going on is this cocaine was considered non-addictive. Literally, people would do it. I go to business meetings, they put lines out on the table with the banks. It was this non-addictive cocaine. And people would take it, and man, it felt so nice. And then it started to destroy us from the inside out. It started to take away the joy, the laughter, the hopes, the dreams, the souls. There's a poem about cocaine makes a beauty queen forget her looks. It makes a scholar forget his books. It just demands more cocaine. And so they started this fellowship because Narcotics Anonymous didn't really want much to do with them. They didn't really think it was a drug. Alcoholics Anonymous didn't want people talking about drugs in their meetings. So here there were all these people that came together and found each other before they found the grave. And they banded together with this ferocity and this closeness. And a woman uttered these words. In fact, she just spoke on a Zoom meeting with me in Poland. And she repeated the words. And this is the sacred words that delivered each of us. And it was, welcome to the first ever meeting of Cocaine Anonymous. My name is Veronica, and I'm an addict. And from those words in November of 1982 to Spiritually Lit, and all the people on this Zoom from around the world, we are all a continuing part of this beautiful thing called Cocaine Anonymous. I read an unknown quote, and it is this: the good we do echoes in eternity. So when that first meeting was started there, and the first meeting in the Netherlands, and as the rest of the world came online, we are recreating first. Just like for anybody who's ever not heard me, it's a first. Me meeting you, it's a first. We get to renew the special nature of this. So here's this fellowship that took a man like me who couldn't stop using drugs, who shot dope with toilet water because that was the only liquid I could get, right? A toilet filled with shit and piss that wouldn't flush, and a moat of piss around it. And I drew that liquid up with my rig because it was the only liquid I could cook my dope with. To a time where I'm shooting cocaine and I couldn't find a needle. I had a syringe filled with the dope and no way to do it. And I thought, what do? I got a rig full of dope and no way to do it. I was on one. Obviously, I'd lost the rig in the process. I lost the point. And I've got the syringe, no needle. What do I do? And I started thinking, what are my options here? My mind said, well, you can squirt it in your mouth. No. And then I think, well, I could save it till tomorrow. I can't save shit. When I take the first one, it demands the next one. Can you hear me on that? Are you with me on that, brothers and sisters? Is that your truth? Because that's mine. You know what? I traded my wedding ring for a $20 rock of cocaine. It wasn't that I didn't love my wife or know the value of the ring, but I had taken that first one, which demanded the next one. And there I am with this syringe full of dope, and I think, what do I do with it? And then I hear this voice in my head say, just shove it up your ass. And I go, ain't nothing going in my ass. That's not my story. So I just hear this voice say, shoot up without a needle. So I tied off and I went, boom. Now that shit's abnormal, isn't it? I would say that is not social drug use. The reality is that was 10 years before Cocaine Anonymous stepped into my life and saved it. So those big stories of madness are not the painful stories of my life. The painful stories of my life were watching my mother and father die before I got clean. Both of them so afraid that their son was going to end up in the grave before them. The painful parts of my story are cheating on my wife and leaving her after we lost a child. The painful parts of my story are losing my honor and my dignity and my valor as a man. The painful parts of my story are robbing my children's piggy banks. The painful parts of my story are when my little boy, who was 6 years old at the time, had a bad ear infection and the doctor gave him codeine with a strawberry flavor or something. And it was on me so bad. And I took that bottle and I chugged it. And I left about 1 inch left, a little bit in the bottom, so I could fill it back with water. So when my wife gave my sick child the pain medication, they wouldn't know that the father who would die to protect that boy had stolen the pain meds out of his mouth. I know what drugs and alcohol do to the human spirit, to the spirit of the addicted, not to the other folks. Regular people, I'm 1 of 10 kids. My brothers and sisters all party hard. They all did tons of shit, but they all had an off switch. They all knew how to stop. They all were able to self-regulate. That was not my story. I had no off switch. And so I'm dying of this hatred. I know all of my own secrets. I know everything dirty and sick that I've ever done. I know every lie I've told, every porn I looked at, every infidelity I had, everything I stole, every home I robbed, every pharmacy I jacked. I know it all. And my diseased mind continually brings that stuff up and tells me that doom loop. You know what I'm talking about? That one that says, you're a piece of shit. You lie. I know you. You're a scumbag. You're a fraud. And I've got those voices screaming in my head. And when they get so loud, and I think the only way out is death, I take another hit of dope. I drink some more liquor, and the voices get quiet, and I go into the silence again. How about the beautiful silence we experienced? I was wondering, did you call on me to start that meeting? Most of the time when people say, hey, we'll start this meeting after a moment of silence, followed by the serenity prayer, and it goes, God, there's never a moment of silence. Y'all actually had a moment of silence. And I know today that silence is God's first language. And so I was so grateful to have that quiet time with all of you to gather my thoughts here. So I know what drugs and alcohol did to me. And so does everybody who uses, but the beautiful thing about sobriety is this: it gives me a new voice. When that man worked his 12 step on me, I didn't know that's what he was doing. I was wearing hospital clothes, and I walked into this meeting, and there were all of these people there, and they were laughing, and they were handsome and beautiful, and they were enjoying themselves, and they were talking about doing drugs the way I had done drugs. And they were talking about crashing cars and robbing shit and madnesses and insanities, and then they would laugh around that stuff. I identified with that, but there was another part of their story that I had no experience with, and that was being sober. And they were talking about, instead of burning their life to the ground, which I understand, I am a burn my life to the ground motherfucker. And I use my family and my loved ones as kindling to stoke the fire. So when I heard that identification of the madness, I thought, yeah, I got that. That's me. But the part that wasn't me was they talked about like going back to school. They talked about healing relationships. They talked about living with valor. They talked about getting married. They talked about babies being born. And they started talking about all these beautiful things that I had not experienced. And so I got deep into this. I jumped into my recovery because I had been willing to do anything it took to get high. Somebody would say, hey, try this. I would try it. I didn't ask what it was. I would just do it. So then presented with this program, they said, here are the steps we took. Do this. So I started doing that. They said, go to get a jail meeting, get a commitment, go into corrections. I did that. They said, get a home group, get a sponsor. I did that. I'm still doing that. I was at a meeting 20 years ago doing great in my recovery, but at a stalemate, and Ken C. was there, and he said, if you don't know the 12 and 12, get to know it. And he talked about what the awarenesses out of the 12 steps in the 12 tradition book had brought to his life. And so the very next day, me and some of my buddies got together and we started a meeting called the Roundtable Group, where we have studied that book inside and out, and it has elevated every one of our recoveries. So I started doing what I saw the people that were smiling did. And as a result of that, I started to write my own rest of the story. I thought that the way it was going to end for me was with a sad eulogy. As a newcomer, if you would have given me a pen and said, write your eulogy, I would have probably written this. He had a lot of potential and a really good heart, and he loved people with all of that heart. But he could not stop from breaking his heart and all of ours. Amen. That was the end of my story. And then as a result of working this program, I've been able to replace the steps in this program of action causes us and helps us to turn our pain into power. So when I talk about God and a higher power, I'm talking about you, because God, the church God, the Bible, the big book, nothing worked for me. I know love doesn't work. Punishment doesn't work. Nothing works. I do drugs. That's Terry. And then I get introduced to this program, these steps. It changes all that because my life has gotten better and better. So I was able to replace trading my wedding ring for a $20 rock of cocaine. It took 12 and a half years for me to get this wedding ring. It takes time to rebuild the trust we destroy. But I have been stewarded by sponsors all along the way and taught by the people like some are on this Zoom, the oldsters that told me how to stay the course. And so I got a new wedding ring on my 25th wedding anniversary. My 25th anniversary. My first 12 and a half years getting loaded in my marriage. My second 12 and a half years sober. And if I had to define addiction with a single word, the word I would use is thief. Because that thief came into my life and oh, did it take. It took my self-respect, my dignity. It took I was a good athlete. I was a good soldier. I was a good student. I was a good writer. Everything good and beautiful that I was, the disease this thief took. Then I followed the simple program of action for fun and for free. And I worked 12 steps I don't believe in. And I start to pray to a God that I know doesn't believe in me. And my life started changing. And on my 25th wedding anniversary, me and my wife, Donna, sat overlooking the Pacific Ocean. And I had that new ring, and she had one for me. And we placed the ring on each other's fingertips. And I said to her this, I said, Donna, there's a question I've wanted to ask you since I first got sober. Now, I cheated on her. I left her after we lost a child. I've been bankrupt. I've had her car repossessed out of the driveway. I have every imaginable horror that we subject our loved ones to, I have done. And there I am, 12 and a half years sober, 25 years married. I put that ring on her fingertip and I said, Donna, there's a question I've wanted to ask you since I first got sober. And she said, what is it? And I said this, knowing what you know now, would you still have married me? And she looked at me and she said, in a minute, baby, because whatever that thief may have robbed, a loving God and Cocaine Anonymous has restored. And so I become the knight in shining armor. When I met that woman, I came into her life as this proud warrior, right? And then she watched the knight in shining armor turn to rust. And every time I go to a meeting, whether I'm attending it or speaking at it, every time I work the steps, every time I read our sacred literature, every time I do the work, it's like I'm polishing my armor. I'm taking the action. And by polishing that armor, I get to become her knight in shining armor. The kid whose medicines I stole, if I could turn my Zoom around, I could point to the house across the street. And my son lives in that house with his wife and two of my 3 granddaughters. Now, how did I pull that off? How did I get this woman who I treated so horribly to love me the way she does? For our 40th wedding anniversary, see, I made my amends. I worked my steps. I did the amends, but there's some amends there are some amends. I got 5 minutes to go. There are some amends that we spend a lifetime making. The amend to ourselves. The amends I make to the people who I was so unthinking. My brothers and sisters who didn't have a brother or one they could love or trust. So I'm always looking for opportunities to tell them I love them, to do something special. Every time when I come home from a meeting, I tell my wife, Donna, thank you for staying by my side, because I know that relationships get destroyed by this horrible disease. But recovery restores. And so for Donna's 40th, for our 40th wedding anniversary, I said, Donna, what do you want to do for that? You want to do something special? She goes, yeah, I want to go to Machu Picchu, the ancient temples, the Incan temples up in the mountains of South America. I said, okay, cool. Do you mind if I plan the trip? And she goes, no, I love that. You know, I love surprises. Go for it. So I started planning the trip, right? Our dope fiend skills come into good use in life sometimes. I started planning this trip. We flew down into South America. We went down the Amazon. We stayed in a treehouse for a week, just me and her, swinging. Oh, me, Tarzan. You know, we were just having so much fun, man. And then we went to Machu Picchu on our anniversary date, August the 5th. And I said, hey, Donna, let's go have a good day today. And she goes, I wonder what I should wear. And I said, how about this? And I had hanging up a beautiful wedding gown I had picked out online. It fit her perfectly, and I had smuggled it into South America. And she put on the wedding dress. And I said, come with me. And we walked out the door of our hotel called the Sanctuary that's built onto Machu Picchu. And we followed, I had arranged all this stuff. We followed a trail of rose petals up the mountain where I had an Inca shaman waiting to renew our vows. And I had smuggled our 2 sons, their wives, and my granddaughters down there to bear witness to the wedding vows being renewed at 40 years. How's that for pulling some shit off? Let me tell you what does that have to do with Cocaine Anonymous? I would say everything, because addiction is where dreams go to die. Cocaine Anonymous is where we dust off our dreams. Whatever it is the disease took, whatever the thief robbed, we get to reclaim. We get to rise up like modern day Lazaruses from our graves and become happy, joyous, and free. And it keeps getting better. And sometimes it's harder than shit. Sometimes being sober with a lot of years sober is as hard as anything you could imagine. But we don't have to do it alone. In the old days where it was just me and the disease, Bill wrote these words. I think it's in the 12 and 12. There is no evidence anywhere that anyone has ever won in single-handed combat against this disease. I fight the disease, I get my ass kicked. We fight the disease, and together we win every time, one day at a time. So I'm so grateful to be here with you. I love you all. I'm so thankful to you, Nick, my friend, for setting this up and letting me get to share the immense love that I feel in my heart for the life I have today. So today, I'm 33 years sober. I'm 46 years married. I'm like, my life's good. Sometimes my life's really hard. But I've got examples who I have watched walk through the fires of hell sober. And they tell me, just keep moving, brother. Action is the magic word. And that'll be our topic for today. Action is the magic word. Peace, love you, thank you.